All right, welcome to Things That Go Bump in the Night, October 30th, 2021 virtual edition. And we are gathered for another, this is our third time being on Zoom for this long-running event of Things That Go Bump in the Night in October, paired with Kiss and Tell in February, and then other times when we might feel like it. So we are going to start our evening of readings with Lisa Summers. Lisa, yes. So since everybody's on mute and we can't applaud, you can give your, accolades in other ways. Just also as a preface, I'm going to be introducing the cast of characters. Only a couple of people gave me factual information to introduce them with, and that I will include. Otherwise, I'm just going to say what I know and think, and hopefully it's mostly accurate. Lisa is one of the founders of this whole thing, and actually is the reason why I'm even involved and started writing again. And Lisa is a creator. I don't know how else to put her in one category. She is a writer, she is a poet, she is a novelist, she is a painter, she is a gardener and creates beautiful, beautiful places for humans and all critters to be fed and nourished in every way. Prolific. One of the people I look at and go, wow, that's how to be a human. So without further ado, Lisa Summers.
Wow, that is not how this year is felt, but thank you. I am dirt under the fingernails 24/7. I think we should have another post-COVID mask event called Who the Fuck Are You? I don't recognize anybody anymore. But I have not written a lot of new poetry, so I thought in honor of Halloween, I would read some of the sing-songy sort of weird sisters poetry that is in my first book, because it sounds like double boil in trouble. It's the first time I think in 27 years I have not celebrated Halloween, so I'm missing it. So I'm just going to read a few short things, and then I can't wait to hear the new readers and see who takes their clothes off on Zoom, Jonah. So the first, if I can see this, the first poem I'm going to read is called Our Last Speakeasy Days, which is something I wrote, and I can't even remember the form of this poem, but it's sort of, these are all sort of jump rope rhymes. Our last speakeasy days. Old Hoagie Carmichael said times were but the dregs, that old bang of bad booze, flappers with bare legs, jingle jangle morals, and them wild weekends, and the bird bones rattled in a bird bones dance. Gone the swinging doors and the old spittoons, gone the red dim rooms of Macready's old saloon, where death dealt diamonds to fate and chance, and the bird bones rattled in a bird bone dance. Gone the dance hall girls, the Jack Pine boardwalk, gone the player piano and the firewater shots. In come the bootleggers, the tanglefoot romance, and the bird bones rattle in a bird bone dance. In come devil's candy, bathtub gin and hooch. In come Bozeman Betty, wooden nickels for a smooch. In come the devil with a password and a prance, and still the bird bones rattled in a bird bone dance. So that's the first one. You can tell I grew up doing a lot of jump roping. Here's another sort of a Halloween poem, and this one is called, these are the pirate poem section of this book. This one is called The Moon Was a Ghastly Galleon. The moon was a ghastly galleon, tossed on a quicksilver sea. The stars shivered in their wishing wells on the shoals of the Hebrides. The captain was a black southeaster who blew a blower through the nails, made splinters of mast and a rudder, and shredded the gossamer sails. The moon was a ghastly galleon, tossed on a quicksilver sea. Her crew was all forsaken, by a whispering westerly breeze. This is the last one. This one is sort of a regional spooky tale. This one's called Beyond the Farallons. With jelly eyes and candied ties, their coats are sugar spun, drowning down the fathom sound until your struggling's done. They come from far beyond the Farallons in their hovels by the sea, where no one's home but Julie, Joan, and Chummy Jack and me. Double, double, boil and trouble, how does your garden grow? On slippery slopes with isotopes and devil's teeth in a row. They come from far beyond the Farallons in their hovels by the sea, where no one's home but Jewel-eyed Joan and Chummy Jack and me. A loop-de-loop in the shark fin soup, they'll toss you in the waves. 2 by 2 in the old fish coop, down dig the eggers' graves. They come from far beyond the Farallons in their hovels by the sea, where no one's home but Jewel-eyed Joan and Chummy Jack and me. That's it. Happy Halloween. Thank you. Yay. Oh yeah, that's from this book. Sorry. Okay, now I can't hear anybody.
I muted you, and now I'm unmuted again. Lovely. Yes. Lisa is the author of several books. I should know the exact count. You can hold up your fingers, but it's many. Yeah. I was going to guess 5, like 4 poetry and a novel. Is that correct? Here.
Yes, and a forthcoming book of collected essays, none of which have been officially published by anyone of note. So they're all, you know, I have one reader. So 5 books, 1 reader, which is okay with me.
Know,
it's all just great to see everybody.
Lisa's the queen of downplaying her accomplishments. All right, thank you, Lisa. Okay, next up I have to consult my list. I think I know, but I'm going to double check. Yes, Steve Meloan. Steve Meloan, another prolific writer, poet, lyricist, busker, traveler, singer. Oh my gosh, and then all the tech stuff. But you know, when we're just talking here with we have this venue, this context of writing, that you've done many more things than that in your illustrious career, and still out there creating new stuff and publishing it. And again, just being another person who's just putting himself and his life out in the world in a lot of different ways. So, and he has a way of telling his stories that they're already great to read, but something about how he reads them out loud is just takes it to another level. So we're in for that treat tonight. Steve Meloan.
Wow, thanks much. So this is an actual story as opposed to poems, but a scary story, and essentially true. Once told to me by a coworker in college days, and it's called The Ranch. Vicky's girlfriend Connie first told her about the place. A beautiful, sprawling horse ranch nestled in the scrub hills above Northridge. As they slammed their school lockers shut that day, Vicky thought, this has to have something to do with boys. And then, sure enough, there are a couple of really hot guys that ride there, said Connie. But she also warned that a bunch of weird hippies had recently moved onto the property. Vicky just thought, so what else was new? It was 1969. Besides, she liked the idea of maybe meeting a wild hippie boy. It beat cruising the malls with Connie and endlessly flirting with the same stuck-up jocks from their school. That next Saturday, she borrowed her father's country squire wagon, winding up the narrow, curling roads off the 405. Connie told her the ranch had once been a set for movies and TV shows, Bonanza and The Lone Ranger. She said there was an old man who owned and ran the place, but that the hippies had apparently moved in and taken over when he'd gotten too infirm to handle things on his own. She edged the squire through the rutted dirt lot, a plume of dust rising skyward. Peasant blast teen girls milled aimlessly about. They reminded Connie of the stoners at her school. And then there were a few young men in jeans and tight t-shirts, one of them definitely hot. A man about her father's age walked purposefully by in worn jeans with long scraggly hair and an unkempt beard. As she slowed the car, he glanced back, a look you gave when you knew someone or wanted to. Instinctively, Vicky turned away. She parked alongside a ramshackle barn, a weathered wooden sign out front reading office. It was cool and dark inside, the heat of the day and the drone of the cicadas like dreams kept at bay. An old man at the counter eyed her, asking what she was there for. I wanted to rent a horse and to ride, she said. Oh, okay, he nodded slowly, as if that wasn't the only possible answer. He entered her license number and address in a weathered ledger, his hand trembling and a bit unsteady, then took payment for a 2-hour ride. One of the peasant blouse girls entered just then and glanced knowingly at the old man. Without asking, the girl grabbed a can of beer from a small humming refrigerator, cracked it open, then headed back out, cocking a jeaned hip at him before blowing a parting cheesecake kiss. Vicky picked out a saddle and bridle from a row of worn metal hooks lining the side wall. Then the young man she'd seen outside led her to the stables, hauling her gear effortlessly over his broad shoulders. He was barely older than Vicky, with a coltish stride and eyes that seemed kind and somehow knowing. She was glad now that she hadn't come with Connie, who prided herself on stealing boys. The young man's legs were so long, it was hard for Vicky to keep up, but then he glanced back and slowed, asking her name and with cute dimples when he smiled. Rounding the corner, they passed the man with the dark beard, his gaze on her once more. The young man had been telling Connie all about his favorite trails, but he stopped in mid-sentence. She selected a brown mare and the boy saddled it for her. Standing close by, he unfolded a ranch map, continuing with his favorite trails and reminding her she had a 2-hour rental. Cinching the saddle one last time, he inadvertently brushed up against Vicky's hip, smiling shyly. There were those dimples again. As she trotted away, Vicky glanced back. It was a beautiful LA day, the sky cloudless and almost painfully blue. The ranch was everything Connie had promised, majestic winding trails and enormous rock formations like ancient stone sentinels. A hawk drifted lazily overhead before finally descending down a long, narrow ravine. The meditative drone of the cicadas seemed to come from all directions at once. Vicky glanced out at the rolling brown hills, past a wiry scrub oak. In the distance, she caught a vista of the San Fernando Valley below and tried to spot her neighborhood. She had told her father she'd be at the mall all day with Connie. She knew he wouldn't like her young ranch hand, but she did. Checking her watch, Vicky suddenly realized the rental time was nearly up. It was already well into the heat of the day, so she made sure to cool the mare down on the long ride back, taking one of the more level trails and then walking the last half mile. Descending the final switchback before the ranch below, she checked her purse for a pen and paper in case she saw the boy again. But he was nowhere to be found. The stables deserted. She tied the horse at the worn posts outside the office barn. Scanning the cool, dark interior, her eyes slowly adjusting, she spotted a man in the shadows at a far corner. He was mid-20s, a wiry red mustache, and eyes that felt hard and somehow calculating. Vicky told him that her horse was outside and that she had already paid. He opened the ledger, running his finger down the day's entries. I don't show any payment, he said in a Texas drawl. Well, I did, she said. Without responding, he went out to check the horse and then returned a moment later. You didn't cool her down, he said, and now one of us is going to have to do it for you. There's a $15 fee for that. Vicky said she'd been riding for years and had indeed cooled the horse down. The man just stared back. I already paid for the ride, and I'm not going to pay more for something I didn't even do, she blurted out. But her words felt foolish, childish. Wanting to take charge, she grabbed her purse, heading out into the blinding light. The man started after, soon followed by several of the girls. The cicadas whispered in unison, coming at her from all sides now. Walking faster, Vicky fumbled with her keys, frantically unlocking the car door, getting in, relocking it from inside, and then turning the ignition. But the engine merely groaned in the sweltering heat. The man and the girls soon surrounded the car and began violently rocking it from side to side. It was as if they had wordlessly become some synchronized machine working towards some unknown task. Vicky stared out at the haunted faces surrounding her. She considered bolting and running, but to where? She'd left the passenger window half rolled down during her ride to keep the car cooler inside. One of the girls suddenly reached in, grabbed her purse from the seat, and then tore away with it. Stop, stop, Vicky screamed, tears welling in her eyes. The car continued to rock ever more violently. Real tears began to flow now. But then suddenly, her young man was there alongside the car, the purse in his hand. He motioned for Vicky to roll the window back down, urging her on with his eyes. Cautiously, she obeyed. As if having received a mental communication, the other stepped back, the rocking seat. Here's your purse, he said gently, handing it into her. His eyes were kind, but urgent now. He leaned in closer. Don't ever come back here, he whispered. She nodded blankly, set the purse on the seat beside her, finally managed to get the car going, and then slowly pulled away. Still shaking, Vicky glanced in the rearview mirror. Inexplicably, the others began to wander off, but through a rising plume of dust, she saw the young man still watching her, his face impossible to read. Vicky and Connie went to the mall that next weekend, the same boring boys, and Connie doing what she always did. Vicky hadn't told anyone about the ranch, not even Connie. She wanted to see the boy again, maybe to thank him, but she didn't dare go back. She'd had a dream about him the other night where they did things to one another. He knew her now in ways that no one ever had. A few weeks later, she was watching the evening TV news with her father. A report came on describing how a band of hippies had invaded a hillside home, brutally murdering several Hollywood stars. The camera footage suddenly cut to an aerial shot of a horse ranch in the San Fernando foothills, and then mug shots of the hippies. Staring at the faces on the flickering TV screen, Vicky recognized every one, and there at the center, the young man who had saddled her horse, his eyes boring into her. Vicky's father glanced over, catching her expression. I'm sorry, princess. My God, what a world. He grabbed the TV remote, but the story was on nearly every channel. He finally landed on Gilligan's Island. Gilligan and the skipper were at it again. There, that's better, her father said, looking over and then patting her on the knee. But Vicky just continued staring, no longer even seeing. She suddenly heard cicadas droning outside the open living room window. Are you all right, sweetheart? Her father asked finally. Was it that story? She still said nothing. He paused. You really haven't seemed yourself lately. Is anything wrong? Is it something at school? But then his face brightened and he turned to her. I bet I know, he smiled. Is it a boy? Thanks.
Thank you. Love it. Really good.
Thanks, guys. So who's up next, Carol?
Next, we have Amy, AJ. So Amy Petersen, AJ Petersen.
Either way.
What can I say? When I think of Amy, the word that comes to mind first is brilliant.
Oh,
Just I don't know. I do not have the list of facts. I know she speaks many languages, speaks and reads many languages, that she is educated in many philosophies and poets and languages, and I don't know what. She has a way of taking absolutely classical, deep work that I cannot even understand, digging into it, pulling something out of it, and then creating something completely new from it that does make sense to me somehow. And I don't know it until she gets to the end. And just has a mind that transcends what most of us normally function at, and yet is one of the warmest, loveliest, best sense of humor people that I know. So I always look forward to what she has to share with us, because it's always something I don't expect. So,
well, you aren't going to expect this. Thank you. That was very sweet of you. But I'm going to do that thing where you aren't going to expect this. I'm going to talk tonight about the cummerbund. So who guessed it?
of course you are. Of course you are.
So, it's that thing that goes here that kind of flattens your shirt if you're wearing a tuxedo. I always thought it was a cummerbund. I wanted to write something about costumes. And since I'm toxically nostalgic, I was going to do something with costumes and toxic nostalgia. And this came up and I realized I couldn't find it because I've spelled it wrong for 58 years. And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting, because when I found out how it's spelled Kummerbund in German, which means worry, concern, the first part of the word, and then binding. So it either binds your concerns or is a concern binder. So it's like worry, it's like something that ties up your worries. So it's a wonderful word, and I never knew that. So that hijacked my poem. And that sense that you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So I have to see what yeah, it hides your missing buttons. So I have one poem, but I'm going to read it really slowly because I tried to read it a couple times before we started and I kept stuttering. So I'm going to try and read this slowly. So bear with me. And it's got a long title. It's called Grand Equivocations on the Custom of Wearing a Tuxedo on the Occasion of One's Expulsion from Paradise. That's the title. So ever since leaving, I have busied my mind, or it has busied me, with lavish ambivalence regarding the whole ceremony, conjecturing concerning proper accoutrements. I fled, tuxedo-clad, sex yet indeterminate, no go bag, though complete, intact, with cummerbund. Mind you, Kummerbund, that's German for fascia, cinching concern at its crux, but also its inverse, a way to worry under wraps. Todos modos, it's usually reserved for high stakes humans, the tuxedo and paradise, both, share newfound irrelevance. Much to my surprise, I've learned a cummerbum is not a thing, nor heaven a verb, nor justice igual. All these errors and expectation cumbersomely prevail over the real deal. A semblance of a flush circle surround to quiesce the messy appearance of the living torso's mesh. Makes for a tight six-pack look, wrapped in a white shirt, starched for a corny exodus, wholly unfit for the momentous event from which I fled. Or was I not chaste? tucks tails trailing, and the devil's ones after them. And after them, the tails of the hounds, hunting the smell of hell on me, also pointing their way back for good or not. Me, dressed like that or not anymore, but down in the dirt, back in the mud, I ditched my costume for the custom of the critters and have since covered my frame in fat in lieu of black cloth. And that shroud of fat has kept me warm and unappealing and lacking competition for resources, ejected from weightlessness into a body flung into the big fat world of mud where, adding insult, the back of my head was just struck by a shoe long after I'd changed. So I guess that at least means something knows I'm gone, something still aware enough to fling at me in exile, this shiny snakeskin shaped shoe, this pointy patent leather texture, a wingtip flung into my wake. That's it.
Who flung the shoe?
What? Who flung the shoe? Who flings a shoe? Who throws a shoe?
Who flung the shoe?
What's that from? They say, who throws a shoe? That's from something. I don't know. I thought it was Princess Bride, but isn't everything from Princess Bride?
Yes, everything is, yes.
Wow.
Quite right.
Oh. Carol, you're muted.
Here I am talking and unmuted. Yes. Hi.
Well,
Lisa, you're unmuted. You get
That's
to
because
talk
I get
now.
to, that's because I get to introduce you.
Yes.
So I only think about the word cummerbund when I have a horrible visual of Harvey Weinstein. I can't figure out why cummerbund and Harvey Weinstein are sort of intermixed, but they are. He just seems like somebody who'd wear a cummerbund in it.
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of the photos of him.
He's wearing a
sloppy
cummerbund.
tux, and he's got that trying to, yeah.
But nobody's thrown a shoe quite hard enough at Harvey Weinstein. So I get to introduce Carol, which is my pleasure. And what I know about Carol is that she's the beautiful woman in Sonoma on a bicycle all the time, teaching yoga, massage therapy, going to farmers market, friend to all. And I have had the pleasure of getting to see Carol more this year because my garden is across from the yoga studio at the community garden. And it's been so fun to share kale with Carol. So I'm going to introduce her as a poet who sort of returned to her poetry at the urging of Stacy and I at a farmer's market, and she never looked back. What does it say? What was your poem? Be something and glow.
Yeah. Be still. What was it? Do nothing and glow.
Do nothing and glow.
Yeah.
Those are words of wisdom. So it's my pleasure to introduce Carol Allison, and I will mute myself now.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to read a couple of things here. One is just for very, very short pieces that are, I discovered this form called microfiction. I respond very well to structure, something like, okay, do this in this contained, rule-laden environment. That's very helpful to me when I have a container to put something in. And I actually discovered this on Twitter a few years ago, which is great because it's 128 characters. And it's like, write a little fiction and it's in that many characters. And so I love editing. I love editing almost more than writing. So it makes me edit. So I have these 4 very short microfictions that actually, these are old. I did write these a few years ago, but they seem to fit the theme. So 1. Silently, she slipped out the door. The biting cold stung the fresh cut on her face. Nervous even in the safety of night, she clutched her suitcase with her good arm and crept into the waiting cab. As it pulled away, she didn't look back. 2. He sat in the coffee shop and sipped. One hand rested casually on his lap, palm down. Soon, a trio of teenage girls entered, giggling in their innocence. As they bent and preened, his fingers curled inward. A slight sigh betrayed him, but no one heard. 3. Finally, blessedly alone, she leaned against the bathroom door in the dark. While glasses clinked and guests cackled, she shook some pills from the bottle in her purse and downed them without water. 3 deep breaths, and she was ready to rejoin the party. 4. I got to the hospital a little too late. A set of blocks was still on the bedside table. The red one had fallen to the floor, his favorite. I picked it up, closed my hand around it, and then put it in my pocket. With nothing left to do, I began cleaning up after the crash cart. So that was the microfiction. So this is a true story. And I just want to say that I have been very inspired by everybody in this group, honestly. This is the first time I've done the introductions, and it just really reminded me of how freaking brilliant and educated and amazing everybody is, just thinking about what to say about them. And everybody has inspired me. Steve Meloan has particularly inspired me because he writes these stories from his life that are just so interesting and compelling, but just kind of straightforward. And it made me realize, like, I thought I don't have stories that interesting, and then I thought, well, maybe I do, So I've been looking more at like what I might write about. So that's what this is, a story from my life, and it's called High Dive. When I was 11, my father and stepmother were friends with a couple who lived in a fancy mobile home park called Swan Lake. Tommy, the husband, was retired from the company my dad had worked at, and his wife was a fun woman who reminded me of Zsa Zsa Gabor. She had an exotic accent, dressed flamboyantly, and said things like, "Jizo Pizo." Swan Lake had a huge Olympic-sized pool, which was one of the reasons they moved there, as Tommy had been a competitive swimmer in his youth. The pool, the golf carts we scooted around the park in, and Zsa Zsa made it fun for me to tag along on the visits. The pool also had a high dive, which Tommy liked to show off on. One day, he and my dad decided that I should jump off the high dive. This sounded like a terrible idea to me. But they kept insisting I could do it and it would be fun and I would love it. I got talked into it. For 2 athletic men over 6 feet tall, the high dive probably didn't seem that intimidating. To my little 11-year-old self, it was like a skyscraper. The ladder seemed endless. Once I got to the top, there was a railing partway along the board, then it ended, and you had to walk the rest of the way to the end of the board with no support. I made it up the ladder and crept a few steps along the handrail, but it was just too scary to go beyond that. I stood there, my hands clinging to the metal railing. I looked down at the water far below. The 2 men were there, treading water and calling out that I could do it. Just go out and jump. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen with terror, but finally I backed up and retreated down the ladder. In hindsight, that was probably just as scary as jumping would have been, stepping backward, down and down in my wet bathing suit, my bare feet on the slippery rungs, exposed and humiliated. At the time, I was so embarrassed and miserable. I felt I had let them down, chickened out. When I was older, I understood that I had been bullied into going up there in the first place and questioned why I didn't resist harder. Now, I think that I was brave. I don't blame myself for giving in. It's hard to say no to that pressure. But when my body refused to step out to the end of the board and jump, I listened to it and took it back down to safety. I feel proud of myself. For as long as I can remember, I've been afraid of heights. I used to think that the high dive experience was an early indication of that fear. Now I wonder if it wasn't actually the cause. 20 years later, 3 guys at the gym I worked out at came in one day very excited that they had gone bungee jumping over the weekend. Oh, wow, I said, that sounds so cool. It was, they told me. We're going to do it again. Do you want to come next time? Yes, I'll do it. I said, I'm in. This response was typical of my MO at that time of my life. No challenge will be turned down, especially when it's a chance to keep up with the guys. Also, it genuinely sounded fun to me. I thought it would feel like a roller coaster, and I loved roller coasters. I liked going fast. The day came, and they picked me up very early in the morning. The wife of one of the guys had an embroidery business and had made us all t-shirts with Gold's Gym bungee jump team stitched onto it. We drove to the site, cold and excited and a little nervous. We met our fellow adventurers out in an empty field outside of town. We were to jump out of a hot air balloon that would take each participant up one at a time. There were about 15 people jumping that day, and we would work as a team to keep the bungee cords off the ground while the balloon was going up and support the person when they were dangling and being lowered back to earth after their jump. The organizers told us how it all worked and what our roles were and how we would all be very safe. When it was my turn, after I was all buckled into my harness and attached to the cords and about to step into the balloon basket, my 3 friends gathered around me and told me how extremely scared they were their first time. Really, really scared. They were fucking with me. Yep, I was definitely one of the guys. I gave them shit right back and could see and feel from them that they were completely there for me. I climbed into the basket. It was very small. Me, the operator, and the video guy were squeezed in tight around the gas burners. We lifted off. The heavy cords of the bungees pulled on me. All of a sudden, I remembered that I was afraid of heights. And we were going up very high, very quickly. A voice in my head screamed, I can't do this. Then another voice, calm but firm, said, well, you're going to do it, so figure it out. We reached the top of the tether. I looked down. The people looked like ants on the ground below. The weight of the cords was really tugging me forward. I felt like they might pull me out and I would fall. Then I remembered that I was planning to actually jump out, so that really wasn't a problem. I was directed to step out of the basket onto a tiny wooden platform fastened to the outside. This sounded like a terrible idea to me. If I changed my mind now, I could just stay in the basket and ask him to lower the balloon back down. I didn't have to jump if I didn't want to. Nobody was pressuring me. I'd chosen to do this myself. I stepped over onto the platform and gripped the basket. I looked down. The group gathered below, most of them strangers, looked up at me. I felt connected to them. I heard them start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I closed my eyes, opened my hands, and jumped.
Hey.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
To prove it. Yes.
Okay. So I am introducing Jonah now.
Okay.
I am always sort of amazed that I am in a group of writers on a list that includes Jonah Raskin, because he's famous. I mean, Jonah Raskin, I know I don't know everything to list about you, but professor, journalist, writer, novelist, poet, activist, traveler, observer of the world and fellow humans, and reflects it back to us in a way that we get to see it through your eyes. And 90% of the events he does keep his clothes on. So that's you know. But it really, honestly, I still just sort of go, how am I on the same list of writers that Jonah is? But yet here we are. So Always an honor to be part of a reading, and an honor to hear you. So looking forward to this. Jonah Raskin.
Thank you very much, Carol. I'm honored to be reading with you over the years through Bump and through Zoom. So am I loud enough here?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, I have them on my screen, so I'm getting them up here. This one is called Not What I Expected. Waiting for the N Judah streetcar, no attachments, no expectations, no trick and no treat, only backpack killing time on the corner of 48th Ave and Ocean Beach, almost in spitting distance of the Pacific. On the streetcar now, though I haven't paid, most riders don't. It's unlikely I'll be fined this fine day with windless sky of blue, bound for House of Noodles on Irving. A real adventure beyond boundaries of my comfort zone on La Playa Street. The streetcar gathering speed uphill, two young masked Chinese girls climb aboard, sit, thumb their phones, 10 more stops to go. Tattooed dad and son climb aboard, San Francisco Giants baseball cap on head of the boy. At next stop, I descend, watch men at work on hands and knees, paving cement surface of gas station, walk to House of Noodles. Sign reads closed. Oh well, I shrug. Walk down Irving to Vietnamese restaurant, eat pho with chopsticks and plastic spoon, drink hot tea, walk to 18th Ave, enter library, get a new card. Signs behind the front desk are in English, Chinese, and Russian. Not what I expected. Take the N Judah home. No attachments, only backpack on my back. And, okay. This one is called Yes, Jim Morrison. Rivers of ash falling, plumes of smoke rising in the blue sky. After the fires, I have the lungs of a coal miner. A skeleton I am of my former self, all bones beneath my flesh. The earth now a pizza oven, from the shores of the Pacific to that wonderland where Alice kept her head on her shoulders and where the walrus and the carpenter dined on unpolluted oysters. A ghost I am now on the edge of the city that shook in 1906. Flames engulfed the famed hills from Knob and Telegraph to pornographic Russian, and nobody, not nabobs, plutocrats, or zillionaires, escapes untouched today. Nobody gets out of here without anxiety or a Hollywood Halloween nightmare or two. The city's haunted houses licked and picked green by the wind, the once green blackened earth in Golden Gate Park. It's all coming true, all the predictions. And yes, innocent baby boy, Jim Morrison, this is the end. So go gently with privates in one hand and guitar in the other. And this one I just wrote, and thanks to all of you. Cummerbund I wore same time I wore Bermuda shorts, which I would never wear now, just as I would never wear shorts of any kind. Though I see balding, pot-bellied men wearing them everywhere and looking like small boys, adolescents, really, who ought to be home, popping their pimples, rolling on underarm deodorant, sniffing their hormonal armpits, lost boys who never will really grow up. All right, and this one is called Ode to Killer Halloween Cat. On the first day of the big rain, I clocked quality time with Killer, a sleek black Halloween cat that once was feral and that's now super friendly, curls up in my lap, purrs persistently, lays down in bed with me at night, right on my chest, and during the day stretches out in front of the fire that throws out heat in this house that has long been a home for me and for cats like Killer and like Leon, the tailless Manx, both cats training me to stroke and pet, domesticate me while I thought I was domesticating them. That's from me today. Thanks for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you. Awesome. So this is what I propose, is that we take maybe a little 10-minute break if people need a bathroom break or a refill break or something, just a little moment. And if you just want to stay here, I'll unmute everybody if you want to talk amongst yourselves, just as we would if we were mingling in an actual physical universe together. And also for those who are here who may have considered reading but didn't commit to perhaps want to say, yes, I will read. Yes, James, excellent, excellent. So because we had a few last minute cancellations. We have Julie and Jane who are for sure reading next, and now we're adding James to that. And if anybody else who's here wants to, or if anybody who's already read has something else to share, I think we have time. So, you know, we can just make it open after Julie and Jane, or you can shoot me a chat and I'll make a new list. So consider speaking up if you haven't already chosen to. And yes, I'll unmute everybody and we can have a mingle and take care of, yes, bio break, take care of whatever you need to take care of.
We'll see you in 10.
Yeah, we'll do like 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so you can unmute yourself. It looks like I don't have all the power. I can't actually unmute you if you don't choose
You
to.
lied.
I can ask you. You know, some Zooms do give you the power to do that, but I guess you have to grant me that power in this case. So I am, you know, I'm not completely the Oz behind the curtain. So you can unmute yourself if you want. All right. So we'll be back in 10. So it's 8. Yeah, so like 10 after 8.
Well, Jonah, if you're not going anywhere, are you going for a bio break?
No, I'm right here.
I want to hear more about San Francisco.
I'm gonna leave the recording going too, because y'all might
something?
say something interesting.
Did you want to hear? Well, yesterday I went to see my friend Zach, who's an architect, who's given me a cubby hole in his architecture office. And he always takes me to lunch. And we go to a place called the High Horse, which is
Sounds like a novel, something in a
around
Thieves stories.
corner. It's around the corner from where his office is, and so
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Where is it?
It's on Washington Street,
In what part of town?
the financial district.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Because I worked downtown at one point. I knew that sounded familiar, huh?
So, and then we always go, there's a ground floor bar, and then there's a basement, and we always go to the basement. Zach always wants to go to the basement, and we're always the only people there.
Oh, wow.
So, and then Zach orders the same thing every time, these stuffed baked potatoes, and I order like a Cubano sandwich, or last time I had an eggplant sandwich, and we always drink Manhattans. because that's what Zach drinks. So yesterday we were down there, and Zach introduces me to this guy. What the heck was his name? His name was, he introduced me to Will, who's this large, muscular, dark fellow. And it turns out he's a bartender. He's one of the bartenders at the High Horse.
Oh.
And he's also a bartender at a saloon. So he just started talking and was telling stories about himself and his life and about San Francisco history. And he said he was through the whole pandemic in the financial district. And so he said often he was the only person on the street.
Yeah.
And he said he really got to know the buildings without the people.
Yeah.
He got to know the buildings. And so now he can talk, he can talk about the buildings. There's some, when he's at the bar making drinks, you know, there are guys there who they're talking about their portfolios. And he said he doesn't know what a portfolio is or how to talk about it. So he told me at the start that he liked whiskey. So I only know really Bushmills and Jameson. I asked him if he drank Bushmills or Jameson. He said, no, I drink Wild Turkey, and which seems appropriate. Because apparently Hunter S. Thompson, his favorite whiskey was Wild Turkey, and
I think that was Janis Joplin's favorite too, was Wild Turkey.
Yeah. I'm not sure why. Maybe because they want to drink of Kentucky.
Southern Comfort, I believe it was.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I think.
Yeah. So so it's always fun to go to the High Horse.
Wow.
So you should come and join me one day.
Is San Francisco, well, thank you. Is San Francisco still empty? I mean, I went down, I've only been down to go, it sounds like you live near UCSF.
No, he's down around Ocean Beach.
Yeah, but the ocean is right here, AJ.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So what was I going to say about something?
Well, did you miss living? I mean, did you decide to do this because you just got this you just had to say yes to a great housing opportunity, or did you want to go to San Francisco? I mean,
I am going to be 80 in like 2 months.
Wow.
So this is like, no matter, I mean, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. I mean, I hope I live quality life for a while. So I thought I should be around my family.
Yeah.
So I have family in San Francisco. I rent an apartment from my brother and sister-in-law, and they live upstairs from me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and there's a backyard. And I'm growing winter vegetables. There was no sun for the first 3 months that I was here, and then only in the last month did it get sunny. So there's a lot of older Chinese women in this neighborhood.
I have a friend, fifth generation Chinatown, and her whole family owns apartments near there.
Yeah, so I opened a bank account at Wells Fargo a couple of weeks ago, and the young Chinese woman banker told me that in an older Japanese couple, when the wife dies first, the husband usually finds another woman to marry because he doesn't know how to do anything for himself. She said, but when the women become widows, they don't get married again, and they don't want to get married again. So I haven't met any older Chinese women, but my brother does, I think maybe he does Meals on Wheels. He delivers meals to older Chinese women. He says, yeah, they're living in all these apartments around here all by themselves, and they're not cooking anymore either. They're getting food delivered to their places. So I have been eating quite a bit of Asian food, either Thai or Chinese or Vietnamese. And I usually I'm walking down the street and I look inside and I see where other people are eating and figure, well, that must be good. So, and I go there and then, yes, and then I'm at the High Horse.
When I've gone to San Francisco in the last, year and a half, it's just weirdly empty.
It is. It's weird.
Weirdly empty.
Yeah.
Well, rush hour yesterday in the financial district, the traffic was the same old gridlock.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be relieved by that, but I'm kind of relieved by it.
Oh yeah, I was there in rush hour yesterday. It was wild south of Market. It was
Okay.
totally gridlocked.
And
Well,
then today,
That's reassuring because I've heard 56% of people in the Bay Area plan to leave in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
We're going to be,
Bye.
it's like.
I used to be on the N Judah line too, Jonah.
yeah, so today coming home on the N Judah from the post office, the train was packed. It was the first time that the train was ever packed.
Wow.
And there were dozens and dozens of people wearing orange jumpsuits.
Oh, wow.
So I was looking at them.
Were they having a birthday party? Was it Halloween?
I said to one of them, all of you are in the same group? And this woman said, yes, we're all in the same group. We're going to the moon. So I said, go baby go. And she said, go baby go. And then they all got off en masse.
I bet you're just brimming with stories. Do you just get home from your outing to the High Horse and just like have a novel every day?
Yes.
I mean, at least a short story every day. I mean,
Well,
there's
just
so
a
much material.
vignette, just
Yeah.
very short, very brief.
Well, I see you share on Facebook occasionally.
yeah.
Just to like, here's my day. Here's who I saw in
Yeah,
my walk.
yeah.
I gotta
It's
get back on
sort of like,
Facebook.
I feel like I'm like experiencing it through you. Just
Oh, this is
the
exciting. I have
human.
this to look forward to. I have to get back on there.
Okay, well,
Well, like you talk about the High Horse, and it just seems like it's going back in time.
yes, the
era.
High Horse, the basement, like, I don't know exactly how many years ago, but the basement was underwater. It was all, and then they filled in the San Francisco Bay. They put in sand and rocks and buried ships there. So, I mean, it's way out into the bay, farther than it used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in olden times, the coastline was like around North Beach or something.
Yeah, exactly. Portsmouth Square.
Yeah.
Yes.
I definitely have a life not yet lived in San Francisco.
Well,
Like I
you're
always
very-
feel drawn.
Everybody's
Yeah.
welcome to visit me here and join me. And
Yeah, I'm
I might take
planning.
you up on that.
sure.
Maybe we need to have a field trip.
That sounds
Group
like
field
a
trip.
great
We
idea.
can all wear orange jumpsuits.
Yeah, a bump field trip. Yeah.
We
That
can go
sounds
to
like
the
a
moon.
great idea.
When we're
Honestly,
done.
let's do that. Let's have
So
a little
the,
trip.
uh,
Visit
And we'll all wear
Jonah, go to the
cummerbunds.
High Horse.
Yeah, the cummerbund, yes.
Yeah.
So the
Conversation
bartender,
comes
Will,
around.
is famous for making pisco punch cocktail. And he gave me the secret remedy. I mean,
Okay.
recipe.
This may become an overnight field trip.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sure.
Slumber party in our orange jumpsuits.
There you go.
So
Well-
yeah, I do have more stories on Facebook, and I started writing some of them also for an online publication called Hard Crackers. I don't know why they're called Hard Crackers. It's called Hard Crackers, but
Oh, we'll check it out.
yeah,
Okay.
you can find that, I think. Yeah.
So I grew up on Water Street,
I know
which
where
of
that
course was called Water Street because it's the water line, but it's 5 blocks away, 5 blocks south of Fisherman's Wharf.
Yeah.
So I always knew that everything north of me was fill and can be dangerous.
Yeah, the guy who takes me to lunch at the High Horse lives on Water Street. Lives at 50
Wait.
Water Street.
You don't know Zach, do you?
I'm talking about Zach.
Oh my God.
That's what I'm
Oh,
talking
come
about.
The same
on.
guy?
Zach Stewart is my dad's ex-architectural partner. And he is a North Beach institution.
Wow, what a small world.
What a
Oh
small
my
world.
God.
It's
I
about that.
love it.
So James, I spent a lot of time with Zach and I talk with Zach. I take a lot of notes, but Zach says you cannot use my name in anything that you write.
Do you know about Canessa Gallery, where he has?
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
gave me a corner of Canessa for my little office. It's like 5 by 5, 5 feet by 5 feet.
Oh, that's fantastic. This
That's
was in the 19th century. It was called Canessa Printing Company. So it's
Yes.
like a 4-story brick building, unreinforced masonry, but it's made it through a lot of earthquakes because it's supported on either side by other buildings.
So Zach claims that he's 93 now. He claims that he has lived this long because he's avoided the media, and he says that his father was done in by the media. I mean, his father wanted fame and all that, and Zach says, I saw what it did to him, and I don't want it to do that to me.
It's funny you say that because to me, Zach was the one who always craved local celebrity. My
Yeah.
dad wanted to be an architect, but Zach wanted to do master builders forums and invite artists in and have lots and lots of long talks that didn't make any money. So that's why it didn't work for my family.
Good idea. Yes.
Okay, this field trip is definitely happening.
Are you guys at all freaked out that this is like,
This is
the
crazy.
same Zach? My mind is blown.
I actually should go get the poem that Zach and my father are in. It won a Pulitzer
So
Prize.
James,
So.
what was your father's name?
Daniel Ronald Osborne.
Can
Make
I
up your
men-
mind, Daniel
can I
or
mention this to Zach?
No, his middle name is Ronald, but obviously he never used
like
that.
you're just making up names now.
Daniel, Ronald.
Jabberwocky.
Yeah.
Oswald.
So
Wow.
Wasn't there a time when we were I was seeing Stevens everywhere and Steves everywhere? It was like
Oh yeah, your Steve story. Yeah,
Steve story, yeah.
yeah.
All right, well, are we back? Are we ready to roll?
yes,
All right.
let's rock and
Okay.
roll.
This
Are you
is
ready to
good.
wield
This is-
power again?
I am ready to take control once more. I am going to introduce Julie. I'm going to mute everybody and I'm going to introduce Julie. So Julie Schrader made her debut with our group reading last February, and as she herself admits, set the bar quite high with a memorable story of a high school date. So, Julie actually, as I requested, sent me a bio, which I will read and then I will say my own little bit about it. Julie Schrader is a psychotherapist, published author, and teacher. She describes herself as a lover of words. She has been writing poems, songs, and stories since childhood. For Julie, writing is a form of self-reflection, a way to collect herself and to simultaneously put herself aside. Julie has authored a novel of historical fiction, memoir pieces, poems, and short stories. She is drawn to mysticism, magic, and dreams. She is a published author. She has a website, julieschraderauthor.com. I would also add about Julie that she talks to and hears from angels and is somebody who just embodies, I read these words about her, but she really embodies that just in her being. Her presence is a very much mysticism and spiritual and angelic and deep. And I look forward to hearing what she has to share with us today. Julie.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Carol. And I'm really happy to be here with everybody. You all feel so wonderful and the repartee is just delicious. So I'm hoping to continue to get to know you and someday meet in person, actually. That would be so much fun. Anyway, I have 2 short poems and then a short story to share. The first one is called My Mother is a Talking Poem. My mother is a talking poem. Her inside has turned out. The threads that weave her thoughts together unravel into surrender. Lifted up on currents of dark wings that caress the night sky. Her tongue is loosened and her words spill out, scattering, fumbling their way, from dreams to memories to visits from loved ones long departed. She strings them together in open-eyed wonder at the sounds they impress upon the air. She laughs at her own inner secrets. The angels of music and poetry visit her at night. They are singing loose the keynote that anchors her body to this earth. In their presence, I allow her words to meander around inside me. I open to drink in the sound of her voice, my blue petals imprinted with each inflection. Under their spell, I have become my mother's forget-me-not, each memory bud blessed with the cross-pollination of her meter and her rhyme. The next one is called Everybody Needs a Ghost. Everybody needs a ghost. You're never coming back. It takes a lifetime. It takes that long. Love would never be better than it was with us. I still dream of you in a big house with crooked stairways. You slam your fist through a wall. We kiss. We laugh until dawn. If only my second sight had warned me against myself. It takes a lifetime. It takes that long. Love would never be better than it was with us. Now your life's all wrapped up while mine is all loose ends. Love never did make sense. I still dream of you hiding in a paint-chipped room behind babies, youth, regret. Love doesn't go away. It's the only thing that stays. You slam your fist through a wall. We kiss, we laugh until dawn. Everybody needs a ghost. Thank you. So here's a short story. It's not microfiction, but it was my attempt at trying to say something in a limited amount of words. This one's called T-shirt Angel. You humans don't understand me at all. Rumors abound that I'm a goody-goody, a chubby cherub, flitting around wearing wings and a halo. In truth, I stand 10 feet tall. Flames leap from my face. My jaw-dropping luminosity could blind you. I am neither good nor bad, but just like you, I have a job to do. That night, Norm was snockered as usual, and also as usual, feeling damned sorry for himself as his car careened into that pedestrian. Horror gripped his soul over what he'd done, and because he couldn't think straight, he'd floored the gas pedal, abandoning her to bleed out all over the sidewalk. She lives, Norm, I proclaimed on my first midnight visitation, my voice booming, suspended between this life and the next on a very tenuous thread. Trembling in crusty boxer shorts, Norm covered his eyes against my incandescence and curled up into a ball on his bed. Am I dreaming? He slurred, rancid whiskey fumes escaping his lips. No, Norm, you should be so lucky. His teeth chattered. Who are you? I increased my height and deepened my voice. I am the angel of death. The walls quaked. He hissed like a cornered cockroach, scuttling backwards across his stained bed sheets. Listen to me, Norm, I commanded. You have a choice. You can trade your life for the other life you so carelessly mangled, or you can go on living with your self-loathing and shame. He peeked out from behind his hands. I will return tomorrow night for your answer. Either way, there's no going back, I warned. With that, I withdrew, leaving him enveloped in darkness. With his hood pulled up, shrouding his face, Norm wavered outside the door to her hospital room in the ICU. She lay comatose, clinging to this world by way of tubes and ventilator. Her family gathered around her, softly weeping. Norm stepped back, wishing he could disappear. Something wet rolled down his cheeks. Back at his flat, he paced. He bunched his hands into fists. He felt a subtle stirring in his chest as he pondered his choice: to accept his ultimate release from this life, or to continue with life as it had always been. Just then, a soft beatific light stirred inside his dank, moldy soul, enlightening every corner, every crevice. He breathed deeply, and he was struck with the absence of something. What was it? What was missing? Ah, the one constant that had forever ruled over him: fear. Fear of dying, fear of living. What had that awful angel said? He could choose to trade his life for another's. What rubbish. It wasn't his fault she'd stepped in front of his car. Yet, an expansive tingle filled him. Was it possible? He reached for his whiskey bottle and then surprised himself when his hand stopped in midair. No need for liquid courage. He'd already made up his mind. Or was it that damned angel? I returned that midnight as promised in all my glorious splendor, and I found Norm alert. He didn't so much as flinch when he took in the red gold crackling flames shooting from my head and my wings spanning wall to wall. He had changed his greasy t-shirt. I've decided, he whispered, his eyes clear. I paused, silent. I waited. I'll take the trade. I nodded my approval. A wise choice, Norm. And without any fanfare, I ascended from his room. An errant feather broke free and floated down to him. He cupped it inside the dirt-caked creases on his palm. That night, he dreamed of his deceased mother drifting on a wispy cloud, opening her arms to him. The next morning, Norm brushed his teeth, dressed, and jaywalked across the street, where he was slammed by a truck and left for dead on the pavement. At the exact moment of impact, the woman in the ICU opened her eyes and looked around the room. And that's it. Thank
Wow.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whew, okay. All right. Next, we have Jane Joost. Jane is my friend, my book club cohort. Jane is an artist in anything that can be art. Jane has probably done that art. So, and award-winning for that matter, award-winning quilts and dolls. She makes jewelry, she scrapbooks, she makes garden art. I can't list it all, Jane. I'm going to miss some because you make art out of everything that you find. And anything, any found object, anything that could be embellished, Jane will make something out of it. I don't know how many, she has projects, many projects going at any given moment. I have factual information about Jane as well as my own impressions, that she is a, she's been writing since the mid-90s as a personal therapeutic tool to process stress and anxieties. She has not really, other than with our group, and this is, like you said, the fourth time, this is going to be the fourth time you've read with our group, and hadn't really read publicly before, but she puts
I had
her
one
art.
other poetry reading at a medical school when I wrote a medical related poem, and then this is my fourth time with you.
Yeah, so, but you put it into books, you share it with loved ones, you share it where it's meant to be. And because yes, she is a medical doctor as well.
I'm not supposed to tell that part. I'm an artist.
Well, yes, but still, you're also, it just keeps adding on to, like, everybody, I just am like sort of astounded at the brilliance and education level and far-reaching skills of the people in this group. So you are no exception to that by any means. So her poet hero is Amanda Gorman.
Yes, I do.
But Jane will share something lovely with us now. Welcome, Jane.
Well, the main poem 6 months in to sheltering, and I wrote it with it's called An Embarrassment of Riches, and it's based on, I used the method of murder of crows, a stand of flamingos, and I've been a collector of those terms for years. And there's this great book from 1991, the ultimate edition of these kind of phrases that includes more.
Jane, for some reason, you sometimes are going to mute. You just went to mute again for some reason.
Well, you take care of it, because maybe your control would be better, because I've pushed the button a couple times.
Yeah, now you're fine, but for some
Okay.
reason, a couple of times you disappeared. So, oh, there you go again. You're gone. Somehow or another, you're going on and off of mute, and I'm not sure why.
I don't know either, because nothing's weird about.
Yeah, where nobody's touching it, so something is.
Oh wait,
something is,
hold on. I have something here.
might be bumping something because.
I think it's, well, no, there's this funny little icon on my screen that keeps saying temporarily unmuted. I don't know. Well, up. Can you put finger on the button?
I don't know. Let's see. Keep talking. I blame Isley.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason you go in and out a little bit. So.
Well, I said, I don't know where I stopped off, but I was saying that
We mostly heard you.
Okay, An Embarrassment of Riches is the poem. I wanted to give you a few of my favorite of these comparisons, because I think they're wonderful. And the first time they were ever in print was in 1486 in a book that was written by a prioress of a nunnery. But of course, even though her name was Juliana, it was published under Julian, and we all know why that was. Okay. So anyway, some of my favorites. Most people know A Murder of Crows, A Parliament of Owls, An Ostentation of Peacocks, A Crash of Rhinoceros.
We're not hearing. You're muting. You're muted again. Here you go. You're back. Okay, you're back. Go. Nope. Now you're off. I don't know what's going on.
Can anybody have a suggestion?
James suggests to go audio only. Maybe take your video off and try audio only and see.
Stop video.
I don't know why it's doing that. So.
Okay. Well, maybe. Maybe that'll
Well,
work.
we hear you now. So
Good, that's fine.
We have the ostentation of peacocks, the crash of rhinos,
A commentary of rabbis, a discretion of priests, an illusion of painters, a quantum of mechanics, a symphony of locksmiths, a coalition of miners. Okay, and then those are professional ones. Here's just a few modern day timely ones. A babble of cell phones, and that could be BABEL or BABBLE. A quicksand of credit cards, a rubble of reputations, a pavement of good intentions, an explosion of theories. Believe me, I collect them anymore. So here's mine, and I had to make a lot of. Okay, an embarrassment of riches. In these difficult times, isolation demanded, when frightening newscats foster spells of anxiety, this accounting of blessings and of heart tracks to travel. A cradle of home, a reassurance of pension, a scaffold of insurances, a cornucopia of sustenance, a council of healthcare, an apothecary of remedies, family contacts that heartwarm, virtual gatherings of friends, a devoted reliance of feline attention, a goodwill of neighbors with offers of help, a sorting of memories into scrapbooking visits, limitless antidotes against loneliness, a patchwork of garden to maintain body and heart, granting refuge for birds, butterflies, and the bees, a diversion of digital library offerings, an unstoppable force field of creative spirit, a routine infusion of Pollyannish delight, an inspiration of art-filled displays in the house, a bountiful influence of crafting instructions, a multiplicity of objects and art supplies for repurpose, a sufficiency of spaces to promote self-expression, interweavings of inner and material resources, interconnections to community, family, and friends, create a safe harbor and a resilience of spirit, giving rise to this rich life, gratitude in abundance. So practicing gratitude was my way of getting through a lot of more. That's a lifting poem that connects me to many women. And it's called Eccentric Ladies. Eccentric ladies dress in comfortable clothes replete with pockets for carrying necessities like pocket knives and measuring tapes, and spaces to store treasures, a barnacle-encrusted shell fragment or rose-colored pebble collected on morning beach jaunts. Eccentric ladies costume according to the day's inclinations and by whim, before venturing out to Saturday morning market, choosing between floral print pedal pushers, denim overalls, or accordion silk skirts, much to the chagrin of their adolescent daughters, more concerned with fashion trendings toward classically tailored linen capris. They live in homes that welcome visitors to porch swings and into rooms lit by lamps strung with crystal beads, offering seats on plum velvet sofas adorned with lace antimacassars and hand-embroidered crazy quilts, to be scrutinized by staid relatives and women friends of a wilder variety who peer out from framed photos tilting on mahogany pedestal tables. They have adult daughters whose lives continually punctuated by oh mom moments, and granddaughters whose minds have been entranced by numerous excursions into the worldly wonders of bison and bugs, flowers and forests, puddles and ponds before the age of 5. They invite friends to tea poured in elegant mismatched Bavarian and Limoges teacups, to be stirred by an unmatchable collection of Victorian silver spoons, celebrating life's triumphs and the routine passages that interlace daily endeavors to create beauty and to tender kindnesses amidst wasteful, destructive indulgences and other toxic encounters. Eccentric women believe in spreading goodwill as readily as jam on a slice of toast, make habits of soliciting the opinions of small children, befriend shopkeepers, and remark upon life's mysteries to strangers who become not so, to the weaving of small connections reflected in these shared happenings, quandaries, and joys. Eccentric women hope fervently to be forgiven for their mistakes and ineptitudes, to be considered with kind thoughts for their best of intentions, but most of all, to be remembered with love. And I thought, well, since this is about Halloween, I've got one that has a subtitle as A Haunting. And I'm not actually sure this is totally finished, but it's close. And I want to give a shout out for Amanda Gorman, because I think she's super good at alliteration. And so I really practice alliteration in this one. And it's called Germs, A Haunting. And it's also a COVID poem. Microscopic, minuscule, but not minutia, a monstrous miasma, rapid divisions, duplications traveling distances, piggybacked and unsuspected, invisible invaders. Possible mutations of past generations generate phobias, justify fears of affliction. Repetitious mandates for caution define social distances into subdivisions of no contact grids. Dictates for prolonged shelter, pressures to mask as mutual protection from contagion from these pervasive, perilous particulate pathogens. Life circumscribed to control case carrier status, hope of containing a pneumonic plague of pandemic proportions for a new age. Demand oscillation magnified by mask muffled speech, effective blockades to facial expressions, a secondary blight on emotional communication and connection, widening the gap of social isolation. So, thank you very much for listening and giving me this opportunity. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Thank you. So before we move on to our next reader, I just want to say that any of those who are there that are not have not stepped up to read, if you have even something very brief to share, or even if you want to share something, it doesn't have to be original. Maybe you have a favorite piece that's from another writer or poet that you want to share. That's fine too. So you have a little time to think about it, and then we're going to have James read. And I am going to ask Steve to introduce James, because I don't know enough about James to introduce him properly, even though I've met him at a few of these events and I think he's swell, but I can't do him justice, but I think Steve probably can say a little more if you don't mind. So carry on.
Okay, so James and I go way back. We have kids in the same school since God knows when. He's a lover of music, a lover of poetry. He has a weekly show on KSVY, Sonic Discovery, where you can hear some wonderful poetry and wonderful music. And so, you know, I'm not sure what he's going to read, but he is a lover and aficionado of poetry. So I'm sure it will be something that will delight us all.
Thanks, Steve. Very good. You got half of my avocation. I am a park ranger, although in this time of COVID and just crazy media and not really knowing whether this is fiction or nonfiction. I've been fired temporarily. So, hey, I've got more time. Maybe I'll actually write something, but I want to make the connection with Jonah and North Beach and our collective past with this Gary Snyder poem. And it was from 1970, yeah, right around the time that my dad was designing with Zach Stewart. Osborne and Stewart were designing the house for Gary Snyder to live in up in the Sierra. So that was the last time he was in San Francisco. This is the poem he wrote. The real work, Today with Zach and Dan, rowing by Alcatraz and around Angel Island. Sea lions and birds, sun through fog, flaps up and lolling, looks you dead in the eye. Sun haze, a long tanker riding light and high. Sharp wave, choppy line, interface tide flows. Seagulls sit on the meeting, eating. We slide by white stained cliffs. The real work, washing and sighing, sliding by. So my dad passed 7 years ago, 2016, no, so 5 years ago. Anyway, he was a Dolphin Club member, and I believe Zach Stewart still is. And the Dolphin Club is kind of amazing community of folks who swim or row in the bay or both. And I've tried it a couple of times and I end up really hypothermic, so it's just not for me. I'm a cyclist. But my brother, who's younger than me, but of course taller and huskier, he joined right as my dad passed, and my dad's memorial in the great room, the boat room of the Dolphin Club, was very memorable. My brother, who knows wood, he's a carpenter, contractor, but now he has a regular job as a building inspector in the city. So he moved back to the city, joined the boat shop at Dolphin Club, and now he's out there rowing boats and swimming regularly, along with my mom, who's of course 86 and swims a couple times a week in the bay, and then she's up here in Agua Caliente swimming in the pool there because she's a swimmer. That's why she's never going to die. Read Bonnie Suey's Why We Swim. She just got a bestseller a couple of years ago because she was a dolphin and met all the dolphins, including Lemony Snicket, if you want to I'm going to start not dropping names, but Daniel Handler is also a dolphin. So I'm a hanger on. I love going to their barbecues every now and then. I guess that's all wonderful stuff. To tell you the truth, that's how we make it through all of this shit on the internet and stuff with friends and connections and extended clans and people who we really can trust. So I was either going to do, I don't know, Joy Harjo did a wonderful poem. She's the last poet laureate of the US. I don't know, do you want to hear Joy Harjo or Kay Ryan, who's got a wonderful
Joy.
Okay. This is good. And it has enough of a dark side to be for Halloween or maybe Dia de los Muertos. An American sunrise. We were running out of breath as we ran out to meet ourselves. We were surfacing the edge of our ancestors' fights and ready to strike. It was difficult to lose days in the Indian bar if you were straight. Easy if you played pool and drank to remember to forget. We made plans to be professional and did. And some of us could sing, so we drummed a firelit pathway up to those starry stars. Sin was invented by the Christians, as was the devil, we sang. We were the heathens, but needed to be saved from them. Thin chance. We knew we were all related in this story. A little gin will clarify the dark and make us all feel like dancing. We had something to do with the origins of blues and jazz. I argued with a Pueblo as I filled the jukebox with dimes in June. 40 years later, and we still want justice. We are still America. We know the rumors of our demise. We spit them out. They die soon. Thank you, and thanks to Joy.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank you, James, for sharing those. I'm feeling I don't quite know how to describe this. You know, this kind of magical thing that happens where you and Jonah find this connection, and it's astounding to like this happened, and I'm as equally struck by that it happened by the fact that it could easily have not happened. You know, it could have been missed. it just kind of happened in the little interim there, right? I mean, it could have not happened. And I don't know how to describe what that is of the precariousness of these things that
You have to write about it.
You know, because when it happens, it's like it's so great, and it's like, how many times does it not happen though? You know, that it's there and it never happens. So I'm so grateful that it did, and I'm so aware that it might not have. So I don't know, equal parts of that.
I'm obsessed with that.
That's a poem.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
Carol.
Yeah, it's something. There's something about that.
Yeah.
And James, thank you too for also demonstrating how it's just as powerful and moving to share something that means something to you, that isn't necessarily original. And so, you know, that it doesn't have to be something you wrote to have it come still from your own soul in that sense, and really create something special. So thank you. And on that note, there's nobody else on the schedule, but there are more people here. So if anybody is moved, or anybody who has already read, maybe there's something that you're going, wait, I want to share something.
I'd like to read this Marianne Moore poem that's sort of a
Please
that would be, yeah, that I just discovered, and it's actually got this really famous line in it that, and I never read the poem. I just had always heard the line, and I've been kind of working with this poem. So I would just want to share it, because it's also sort of a nice, it's a poem called Poetry. So you probably know it. But I didn't know it, weirdly enough. And it's about truly appreciating poetry. So I thought it would be appropriate. I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers that there is in it, after all, a place for the genuine. Hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise if it must. These things are important not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are useful. When they become so derivative as to become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. The bat, holding on upside down or in quest of something to eat, elephants pushing, a wild horse taking a roll, a tireless wolf under a tree, the immovable critic twinkling his skin like a horse that feels a flea, the baseball fan, the statistician, case after case could be cited did one wish it, nor is it valid to discriminate against business documents and school books. All these phenomena are important. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half poets, the result is not poetry, nor till the autocrats among us can be literalists of the imagination, above insolence and triviality, and can present for inspection imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Shall we have it? In the meantime, if you demand on the one hand, in defiance of their opinion, the raw material of poetry in all its rawness, and that which is on the other hand genuine, then you are interested in poetry. So it's the imaginary toads, it's the imaginary gardens with real toads in them. This is one of the kind of hallmarks of all art. It's how do you make it real, and when you're making it up.
Thank you for that. I'm
Yeah.
going to leave, and I appreciate being part of this tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks for letting me read that. I've just been itching to kind of get into this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, not to get like sort of pedantic about it, but even in like writing the piece I wrote, and when writing something to share in that sense, to put it together, and it's like the story I told was true, but still wasn't complete. It's like, if you're going to write it because you want to kind of focus it and make it work for a piece, you have to leave a lot out. And it's kind of a weird feeling. It's like, well, is it still true? Yes, it's still true, but I don't know, it's an interesting process. And anybody who's tried to write stories of their life, I'm sure, has something to say about that. And memory is a tricky thing. I mean, literally, telling a story of something that happened when I was 11, and I only think I was 11. I don't even know for sure I was 11. It was thereabouts, but let's not like go on and on about trying to figure that out. And it's literally 50 years ago. I mean, how accurate is it? It's as accurate as I remember it, but if there was a video of it, I'm sure it would be different a little. So yeah, it's a weird thing, writing something that you're trying to make be true. So you want to say is true, but is it true? It's hard to know.
Especially because once you write it, it becomes your truth.
Yeah.
And I remember, was it last time when we were winding down our reading, we read Works by Lisa, and she wasn't there.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
somebody did. Yeah, somebody read something by Lisa.
I did, but I know we
Yes,
had. I
yeah,
know
you did. We did. We brought Lisa in. Yes. we did bring
A
Lisa
tribute to her.
You weren't there, so.
Yeah, I have two readers now.
Yeah. So, if your ears were itching.
I just have to ask, Lisa, how is it that you have no paperbacks in your library?
This is not my library.
It looks like a school.
But there's a whole other library over there of Sean's biographies, if you want to see those.
I actually, Lisa, when you first put it, you said you were at the back. I thought it was like the fake background, but then I saw you like fussing with the lights. And I'm like, oh no, it's real. I thought it was one of those fake ones.
No, it's incredible. There's like 4 walls of these. They're all
So wonderful.
yeah.
It's not green screen.
Are they classics? What are they? Are they all classics?
Yeah, they're the folio.
They look like Hemingway and Steinbeck and.
No, real books.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
It looks empty.
Yeah.
No, it's like Jesse, my son keeps putting them into his backpack, and I'm like, you cannot take those. Those are. I'm the only one that reads them.
But there's no text in that one.
Oh,
I'm in a weird version.
I don't see it. Look, I see blank.
Okay, there it is.
Oh,
There it
there's
is.
a picture.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, look, when you just.
It was just really
blank.
weird because it looked like you grabbed, out of your virtual reality background.
Yeah.
Book.
no, this is In Search of History by Theodore White. It's a Franklin library. These are real books.
Wow.
And I've read about 8%, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you've read any of them.
No, actually I'm impressed myself that I read anything.
But I will say that if and it doesn't happen often, but if I go to a party somewhere where I don't really know the house, first interest pets, second interest bookshelf.
Yeah. And record collection back when there were records.
Yes.
All I look at is people's plants. Like what plants do you have? Like never go to a doctor who has dead plants in his office. But Amy, I was kind of thinking about your poem. Like I remember working on an essay with my older son in high school. I had to look at Ginsberg and Whitman. There's 2 poems about being in a supermarket. Jonah, you probably know these. And I hate both those poets, like with a passion. I hate Ginsberg and I hate Whitman. Like, And I had to start working with these poems to help him write this essay. And I'm like, God damn it, I really like these poems at the end of the night. Like I was sad that these working with the material of the poetry, it actually turned me around to what they were doing, even though my self hates those two poets. But after working back and forth between these two versions of this poem about the supermarket, you can't help it. Like you're working with the raw material of the poem, and even though you want to hate Whitman, you want to hate Ginsberg, which I do, I couldn't. You have to sort of get into the bones of what you're dealing with, and it does sort of turn you around against your own will. So I like that opening line of that poem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got an A on that essay, by the way, in AP English for
Are you down there by yourself, or are there other family members other than Scott's mom?
No, it's just me and Scott and Scott's mom. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's great. No, no kids at home anymore. Just 2 dogs, 6 chickens, and that's it. No, actually, yeah. So, but not writing a whole lot of poetry right now, but I think there's another poem about poetry by Billy Collins, which I really like about, you know, when poets write funny poems about hating poetry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, it was so nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last call, if there's anybody else here who wants to have a moment in the spotlight. Going once.
I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Alisonn, please
Yes, Osborne.
read something short.
And then your
Alisonn.
plant wants to read something.
Alisonn, Alisonn, are you going to read something?
Yes, I'll read something.
Oh, please. Yay. Alisonn, I will say Alisonn is a gardener and a photographer of her garden. That is, I'm telling you, her flowers that she takes photographs of. My goodness.
Oh, thank you.
It's astounding. It's poetry in itself. So yes, please share.
This is just a short essay I wrote during the time of, well, we're not done with the time of COVID, but this is a short essay called Never Turn Your Back on a Bluebird. Dear friends, there's a lot of advice floating around today. Some of it's practical, like how long to wash your hands, what percentage of alcohol your hand sanitizer needs to be, etc., etc. Of course, some of it's helpful, but sometimes I find the dispensing of so much advice counterproductive and overwhelming. Case in point, in catching up on the news today, I found a small tidbit in the headlines that encouraged everyone to walk around their homes so many steps per day in order to help decrease the risk of dying early due to cancer, heart disease, and other causes. I laughed out loud when I read this. Really? I thought, first of all, walking is not a deterrent to cancer that I know of, but even if it is, do we really need to be reminded right now that we could die early if we don't get enough exercise? This is the problem with advice. It always starts out so well-intentioned. Today, I was out in my garden watching the butterflies, talking to my flowers and rearranging things. I sat down in the warm sunlight and just let myself be bathed in it for a few minutes. When I opened my eyes, I saw a flash of blue just outside my gate. Curious, I followed it and I saw a lone bluebird, strikingly beautiful in its vibrant shade of incandescent blue. Just over a month ago, I saw a handful of bluebirds in town and I remembered how much joy they brought me in that moment. I don't see them very often. That flash of blue usually turns out to be a blue jay, but this time, just like last month, a bluebird right at my home. I watched it for a moment longer and then I turned around and went back to my gardening. And then like a bolt, a voice inside me said, "What are you, crazy? Never turn your back on a bluebird." What part of my garden couldn't wait for me to enjoy this rare treat? I turned around and went back to my bluebird and talked to it for a while. I had a lot to say, and as it turns out, bluebirds are good listeners. This one was, anyway. In time, it flitted away, leaving a memory of a color forever seared in me. It changed me. This little bluebird lit up the darkness for me just for a moment, and sometimes a moment of light can change us. Nobody needs to be reminded to enjoy beauty, but I decided today that if I were an advice dispenser, my advice for today would be never turn your back on a bluebird. If it's not only that you may not see one again for a while, it's that the joy and beauty they simultaneously bring is immeasurable, and we all need beauty and joy right now more than ever. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Yay. That is good advice. Right. Okay. Anyone else? Wow. Yeah, it has been a pleasure. Wow.
Yeah, it's been great seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for running this.
Yeah.
Thanks for setting it up. I'm
And,
really
and
grateful.
thanks to Carol for bringing it all together. So
I was a real sloth this time around, so I'm very.
Well, we all made it work. So February, kiss and tell. Maybe
Sounds good.
Maybe we'll be in person again
Oh, that would be so
by
great.
then. Wouldn't that be nice? So,
Yes, that would be
but
really
for
nice.
sure,
Wonderful.
whether it's on Zoom or in person, we will do this again in February. And I'm going to save this chat. I think I can do that. I'm going to save the chat because there's some lovely things that went on in there. So we'll have that too along with the recording. So, all right.
All right.
all
Good
right.
night.
Guys,
Everybody
thank
have sleep well,
Night.
and I hope things don't bump too much in your night. Or maybe
Maybe
they
so.
will.
Yeah.
Maybe I wish that for you.
Depending on the nature of the bumping. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Good seeing
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.